I wanted to thank everybody. Everybody hear me? First, I wanted to thank everybody responsible for bringing me here. Without going through the names, I want to thank you. It's a pleasure to be back. And certainly this time of the year is a very important time of the year. And we're only, what are we, we're less than 2 weeks away from Rosh Hashanah. So I thought that it would be very appropriate it would be very appropriate to speak about Rosh Hashanah, because it's not just a Jewish holiday, obviously. It is something that has incredible significance for each one of us. Now, as we know, Rosh Hashanah essentially is what is called it's a day of judgment. But what I want to do tonight is show you that Rosh Hashanah is not what you think it is. It's not really a day of judgment, which is interesting, although judgment obviously is included. But what I want to do is I want to broaden your understanding of what Rosh Hashanah is, hopefully to a much greater extent. And because of that, or as a result of that, to give you what's called an edge in terms of pleading before the Rabbanu Shalom. Because if you know really what's going on, then it gives you obviously a much greater capacity to know how to plead. It's like any lawyer. If a lawyer doesn't know what the issues are involved, right, how can he defend his client? Or prosecute his client, either one. So what I want to try to tell you tonight is what exactly are the issues in Rosh Hashanah? And like I say, that should be tremendously helpful in how to prepare for the day. Also what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you somewhat of a update on what's happening now in terms of the 21st century. I was here, about a half year ago, so, I spoke extensively about that. But of course, everything moves forward, and there's a lot of material, obviously, that's happening. So I'd like to give some of the ideas after the Shir and Rosh Hashanah. In many ways, Rosh Hashanah is a very difficult holiday to understand. Let's take a look at what is difficult about it. First idea. We think that Rosh Hashanah, the essence of Rosh Hashanah, is the concept of dinim, or judgment. That is true, and it's not true. And most people don't really understand the fullness of what the day really encompasses. So the first question I will ask is, what is the real essence of Rosh Hashanah? If it's not judgment per se, then what is it? Second idea. Who ever heard of anybody having a judgment day once a year? Could you imagine if they had a judgment day once a year in New York, right? Could you imagine what would happen? It would be pandemonium. Everybody would be doing crimes because the courts are only open one day a year, right? So why not? So that whole concept already tells us there's something wrong here. How can there be a judgment day once a year? Another idea is that the Gemara says that B'chol Yom, every day a person is judged. So then the question is, what's the difference between the judgment that occurs every day and the judgment that occurs on Rosh Hashanah? You see. So you have both questions that are very puzzling. Another idea is that every Jewish holiday corresponds to some type of a Jewish historical event, right? Pesach, Yetzias Mitzrayim, exodus from Egypt. Shavuos, of course, is the giving of the Torah. You have, of course, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, and so on. But if you think about it, what is the Jewish historical event that corresponds to Rosh Hashanah? There is nothing really. Yeah, I mean, there are things that occurred on that day, and so on, but I wouldn't call that a historical event for the Jewish people. So then, why do we have Rosh Hashanah altogether? It doesn't correspond to any type of historical event. The only event that it corresponds to in a certain sense is Adam Rishon. the world was created on the 25th day of Elul, and on Tishrei, Aleph Tishrei, Adam Rishon was created. That's fine. But Adam Rishon is not Jewish. Who was the first Jew? Avraham Avinu. He's called an Ivri, right? He's the first Hebrew. And we, of course, are Hebrews. That's really our biblical name. The word Jew or Yehuda only comes really in after the 10 tribes were exiled, because the most prevalent of the tribes was Yehuda and Binyamin, Levi, and so on. But Ivri is the real original biblical name. So the only one who had that name, of course, was Avraham Avinu. Adam Rishon certainly was not an Ivri. So then the question was, why do we have Rosh Hashanah, if we're going to have a day of judgment altogether, on the first day of Tishrei? Why not have it on some real Jewish holiday? Like Sukkot or Yom Kippur or whatever, and so on. What's the meaning that it's on the first day of Tishrei? And as I pointed out, Adam Rishon clearly is not Jewish. So this seems to be a holiday which is an anomaly, actually. It deviates from the norm. That's the question. So why is it really on Aleph Tishrei? Another idea. It says that everything is judged. Animals are judged, malachim. Every living thing is judged. Now, we have Bechira, so it makes sense to be judged, because we have accountability. We are culpable or guilty if we do a sin. So that makes sense. But what about the rest of the life forms? Animals or whatever, what do they have to do with judgment? They don't have any free will. It doesn't make sense that they should also be in judgment or have any kind of culpability or guilt. So the question is, what does kol boy olam mean really? Which we say, of course, in Unisana Toika. What does it really mean? Now, here's a real problem. Imagine a guy's going to be judged the next day. He has to make a court appearance, and the issue of the court appearance is life and death. He's guilty. He's accused of a crime, let's say murder, right? And the court is going to sit in session tomorrow, right? If he's guilty, and if he is guilty, will he get the death sentence? What do you think he's going to do the day before? I'll tell you what he's going to do. He's going to be in the room with incredible fear and anxiety. He's going to be popping Prozac all day long, you see, not to be depressed. And he's going to be taking probably Valium or some other powerful, tranquilizer, because it's a frightening moment to go to court, right, and be judged life and death. Now, we know Rosh Hashanah is also, you are judged, one of the main things you judge is life or death. So if you figure that out, you go into the house of a Jew, right? What should a Jew be doing? Same thing. He should be incredibly frightened and doing what? And taking Prozac. What is he doing? It's incredible. You walk into his house and the guy's dressed, everybody else is dressed, right? He's making kiddush with the best wine, right? And he's got the best food, the best dishes, Would you ever think that he's going to be judged on life and death the next day? Of course not. It's incredible. This doesn't make any sense. In other words, the activities that go on that day is completely incongruous with the event itself. Do you ever think about that? It's incredible. How do we understand that? And not only that, Chazal call it Yom Tov Shel Rosh Hashanah. How could Rosh Hashanah be a Yom Tov? It's impossible. That's a very difficult question to deal with, because, like I say, there's a complete contradiction in terms of what is happening and what the day is about to happen, and what's about to happen in the day, and so on. And not only that, the Gemara says that the Malachim stood in front of the Rebbeinu Shalom, and they said, if it's a Yom Tov, right, why not say Hallel? You believe saying Hallel, and Hallel you only say with joy. How could the Malachim propose that? It doesn't make any sense, you see. Because Rosh Hashanah, of course, is filled with tremendous judgment. So how could you say, forget about being a Yom Tov, how could you say Hallel? What are the Malachim thinking? You see. So what does the Rebbeinu Shalom say to them? How does he answer them? So he says to them, well, I'll tell you, really you got a good point. Maybe I should say Hallel. But not really. You know why? Because you can only say Hallel, right, when you are filled with joy, you see. But since the books of life and death are open before me, right, there's a lot of anxiety or whatever, okay, so you can't say. In other words, you can't say Hallel when there's a relief. You can only say Hallel when it's joyful. So he answers them. So the question is, you mean the Malachim didn't know that the books of life and death are opened? I mean, what's the dialogue here? You see. Then we have the concept of, we say in the Musaf, we say various psukim, Malchus, Zechroinus, and Shofars. What is the logic? Malchus is where we declare God to be king. Zechroinus is we say that remember what our forefathers did, maybe their merit can help us. And then Shofars, we recite psukim in terms of blowing shofar. And the question is, why this type of order, or why these types of pleas? Another question, why do we blow shofar? You mean to tell me because we blow shofar, that's going to change the din for us? What does that have to do with it? And the essential mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah is the shofar, besides the korbanos and the tefillah. But the essential mitzvah really is the shofar. What does the shofar have to do with Rosh Hashanah? Now there are different answers to that. Rav Sadia Goyen lists 10 different reasons why shofar is important. But in the end, you're still puzzled. In the end, what does shofar have to do with Rosh Hashanah? Obviously, it's critical. Or else, why would it be commanded? In any case, not only that, but the Gemara says that the sounds of a shofar emulate crying. There's tekiah, shvarm, trua, and so on. Each one of these things represents a type of a sound cry. Shvarm is a what's called a sigh. Then you have staccato tears. Then you have a long wail. That's really what they are. Why should the sounds of a shofar resemble crying? What does that have to do with shofar? So that's another question. It also says that the Satan is confused in terms of the Rosh Hashanah itself, you see. Now, the last time I checked, the Satan's IQ is off the charts. You would think that by now he would get it, right? What would he get? That it's Rosh Hashanah and the Jews are going to blow shofar. So can anybody tell me why he's confused? It sounds like he needs therapy, doesn't it? So the question is, what's confusing him? You see, there obviously something going on here that's beyond what we really know. Also, we read the Akedah on Rosh Hashanah. And the Akedah, of course, we can say, because the Akedah, because of what Avraham Avinu did, obviously has tremendous merit. You see. But we're still getting merit from the Akedah. The Akedah is an event that happened 4,000 years ago. That's a long time ago. So the question is, why are we still getting this merit? What is it all about? Is it merely just to evoke the merit of Avraham Avinu? Or is there something else going on? And I'll give you the last question. Why is Aseret Simei Tshuva after Rosh Hashanah? Aseret Simei Tshuva should have been before, right? Normally, a guy wants to think about Tshuva before the judgment. You don't think about Tshuva, repentance, after the judgment. It's like, doesn't make any sense. Anyway, these are all the questions I'd like to answer. For anybody who's counting, I've asked 15 questions. And the trick is to answer it with one concept, not with patchwork. People have dealt with these questions and each one has a different way of addressing it and so on, That's not what you want to hear. That's not what truth is. Truth is always that there's one concept that can answer every problem. That's the beauty of the elegance of truth. So therefore, what I'd like to try to do is to answer all these questions with really a single concept. That's what I'd like to do. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. From all of this we see what? There's something else about Rosh Hashanah that we are not aware of, clearly. There's something going on that we really don't have an inkling about, and so on. And the question is, what is it really? And the idea to that, whatever it is the essence of Rosh Hashanah. In order to understand Rosh Hashanah, you have to understand certain concepts of what's called the divine agenda. And I just briefly want to mention that because Rosh Hashanah is really, in many ways, a result of that agenda. What is the agenda of God? The Rebbeinu Shem created a creation, he made a creation. Fine. Why did he do that? Because he wants to bestow an infinite state of goodness on a human being. That's really only the reason. He wants to bestow an infinite pleasure on a human being. Why does he want to do that? It's unknown. We only know the answers, leheita b'achrisecha, which means to bestow goodness, a tremendous state of ecstasy on a person. Why does he want to do that? We don't know. The Rosh has never revealed that idea, the motive behind the motive. So that's one idea. Now, second idea, what is this incredible state of goodness? What is it? What's the experience? And the answer to that is that the Rosh decided that that experience is going to be himself. In that state, you will attach to Rabbanu Shalom in a way which we do not know now, but the experience will be infinitely ecstatic for eternity. In other words, a divine experience is the ultimate reward, or rather, the ultimate experience that the Baruch Shem wants to give a person. That is called Dveikus. Dveikus is the essential relationship that we have with God in the future world, and it is through that relationship that there's an infinite state of pleasure. Now, the question is this. The Rosh has to make a decision. Does he want to give this to a human being for free? And if that's the case, then this pleasure will be a gift? Or do the people have to work for it? And if that's the case, then that will not be a gift, it will be a reward, because you have to expend effort. The Rebbeinu Shem decided, without going into why, that it has to be a reward. In other words, the attachment that you have toward God must be earned. It is not a gift. This is what he decided, without going into why. However, what you have to remember is that there are an incredible amount of things or devices that the Rebbeinu Shem did that will hopefully ensure that you will get to Olam Haba. It's a very important idea. So even though the reward itself is predicated on what you did, and by the way, that's called din, justice, the Rebbeinu Shem has many things in action whereby he enormously assists mankind, and specifically the Jews, to get into Olam Haba. In any case, this is what he decided. So if that's the case, then you have to have a task. What is the task that God assigned? Well, what he did was very simple. He said, the reward for your efforts is me, is a divine attachment. So therefore, I'm going to create a task which is identical to the reward. What is that? I am going to create a reality, a dimension of reality, in which I will be concealed. That's called Olam Hazeh. Olam Hazeh, basically this world, is a reality that was created by God. However, God is not here. He has absented himself in a certain way from this world. And that's the chesaron, that's the task. So he created a situation which is deficient. And that is, it's a reality, or it's an existential state in which he is concealed. And what he wants, and this is the task, he wants us to bring him back. That's what he wants. He wants to re-enter creation. And it doesn't mean literally re-enter, but he wants to reappear, so to speak, in this world. That is called tikkun. Tikkun, rectification, or correction, or restoration. That's what tikkun is. This is the job, fundamentally, of a Jew. We are repairmen, you see. Doctors repair bodies. Electricians repair wiring or whatever, right? You have car mechanics, they repair cars. What do we repair? We repair existence. We correct an existential state in which the Rebbeinu Shem now appears fully. And obviously the one who ushers in that state is the Mashiach himself. In any case, therefore, we have a chesan, we have an opportunity, a task, and the task is to bring him back. It's really very simple when you think about that. And the way it works is that the more you spend time searching for God, so to speak, the greater will be your experience or attachment to him. That's dinam, that's measure for measure, which is the way he created the world. Great. Now, the next question we have to ask is, okay, but how do we bring him back? How? What is the mechanism or the device that we could do to remove the deficiency of this world and bring God back? That's a very important question. And the answer to that is mitzvahs. The Rebbeinu Shem created mitzvahs, a commandment, right? That if you do, it somehow has the effect of bringing God back. It's a very important idea. So mitzvahs is called really a tikkun device because it enables the Rebbeinu Shem to return. Now, the Rebbeinu Shem knew that Jews are not going to do mitzvahs. They'll do it sometime, but they won't do it in sufficient numbers to come back. Therefore, he decided to give them a second tikkun device. And what is that? That is tshuva. That is repentance. Repentance or tshuva undoes the damage that a person created by doing an avera. But the Rebbeinu Shem knew that Jews are not going to do tshuva, or certainly not sufficiently. So therefore, he decided that he's going to give a third mechanism, a tikkun device, and that will finish the story. What is that device? That device is called suffering. You see, people make a mistake. Suffering in the Goyish world is all about retribution, punishment. In the Jewish world, suffering is not about punishment, you see. It's not about retribution. It is about rehabilitation, which is a whole different concept. And the Rebbeinu Shem shows you that he's not just interested in justice, he's also interested in rehabilitation. Because after the Jews left Egypt, he said, Ani Hashem Reifecha, I am God, your healer. A healer isn't punishing. A healer is interested in only one thing, to cure you, to rehabilitate you for whatever's wrong. The Rebbeinu Shem fundamentally, even though he's a judge, fundamentally has engaged in a new activity called rehabilitation, you see, which, thank God for us, that's what he does. Therefore, we now see that there are three tikkun devices. Now we want to set up the whole thing. What is a setup? He creates a world. Now, there are three actions of God that describe everything the Rebbeinu Shem does. It's that simple. There are only three categories. And anything he does will fit into one of those categories. What are these categories? The first series of actions that he does is called Hanhogas HaKiyum. It is the actions that God does to ensure that there will be humans, there will be a deficiency, and there will be a task. It's the background, you see. Therefore, he creates an entire universe, or many universes actually. He creates mankind, he creates animals, he creates everything. Because everything is necessary to do the tikkun, which is interesting. Let me give you an example, how infinite it is, and how little we really understand about what is necessary to do the tikkun. We all know that there's such a thing as beetles, right? Do you know how many species of beetles there are? There are 300,000 different species of beetles. You're probably thinking, I probably got all of them crawling in my backyard. However, which is astounding. So the question, and now it's not that there are 300,000 beetles. There are infinite amount of beetles crawling all over the place. But there are 300,000 different kinds of beetles. It's astounding. So the question we have to ask is, why? You mean if there was 299,999 species, the world couldn't exist, right? Is there a rationale for the number? And the answer is yes. There is a reason why there has to be 300,000 species of beetles. We don't know that. There are 7,000 species of ants. You know, there are 30,000 species of orchids, plant called an orchid, right? It's astounding. Every one of these things must exist in order for the Bria, man's task, to be able to be fulfilled. Astounding. We have no idea why. I'm just trying to show you how infinite is the Kiyum itself. When God set up a universe, how infinite it is, and how many things are required that we can't believe what's required. Yet every single thing that exists must have a rationale. They must advance the purpose of creation. Yes. And if they don't, they become extinct. In fact, that's the concept of animals becoming extinct. Because for whatever reason in God's plan, this animal is not required anymore for the tikkun. So therefore God allows mankind to make that animal extinct. Yeah, that's how tight is everything. So that's the first series of actions. Is everything required in order for mankind, specifically, certainly mostly the Jews, to do the tikkun process. And we now understand that's really what the Jews are involved with, the tikkun process. How do we bring God back through either mitzvahs, tshuva, or yisurim? That's what it's all about in a nutshell. The second acts of God, which is very important, is called Hanogas HaMishpat. Hanogas HaKiyum precedes man, because that's the setup. Hanogas HaMishpat, okay, is a reactive activity or action of God. It waits. Man is given free will to do whatever he wants, basically, although there are restrictions. In any case, he has free will. And he has, as a result of that, he has commandments, you see. So the question is, what's he going to do with those commandments? You see, he has free will. Why does he have free will? Because he has to be responsible for Olam Haba. We need to create our own future world. Because as I said, the reward says that you will get Olam Haba, and that's where the reward is. But in order to do that, you need to be accountable for what you do. The only way to be accountable, obviously, is free will. And therefore, what God does is he waits to see what a person does. And then, based on what he does, he responds. Judgment, mishpat, dinam. Therefore, the totality of the entire judicial system that is responsible for using mishpat as reward or punishment is the Hanogas HaMishpat. That's the second acts of God in terms of how he runs the world. That means if a person does good, he receives good. If he does bad, then he receives bad. But remember, like I said, that bad is not punishment per se. It's rehabilitation. And how that's rehabilitation is an incredible discipline of how Yisurim, and there are all kinds of Yisurim, right? There's divorces, there's bankruptcies, there's illness, there's poverty, right? There's persecutions by the Goyim. There are myriad forms of a punishment. And all of them are fundamentally to be rehabilitative, as we will see later on, and so on. In any case, so that's a second series of actions, the Hanogas HaMishpat. Those are the judgment actions. But what's important to know also, by the way, is there is no reward in this world, for many reasons. One of the main reasons is because he can't give you a reward, because the reward would be attachment to him. So what does it mean by a reward? It means that he will give you a greater opportunity to do more mitzvahs. You see? That's what it means by reward. In other words, it's not that you get more benefit. What it is that you now have an opportunity, okay, to earn more reward and therefore to become closer to God in the future world. It's an important idea. That's what it means by schar b'hai amol leka. There is no such thing as a real reward. However, there is a reward in the sense of, like I said, a greater ability to earn more. Anyway, in any case, now there's a third series of actions. What does that mean, a third series of actions? Well, we have the entire world, right? And it's all set up. You got the whole setup, right? And then we have man and his doings, his actions, and then there's a mishpat. What else is necessary? What's necessary is this, because there's a very big problem. The problem is that man has free will. And therefore, it is possible for all mankind to sin, means to do the opposite of what God wants, 24/7. Imagine that? And if that happens, then God has to do what? To destroy the world. Because nobody's doing anything what he wants. It's possible, it's unlikely, but it's possible, because everybody has free will. If that happened, then the will of God is frustrated, right? Because he wants there to be a world, he wants there to be a nation, whatever, Jews, whatever, in Olam Haba, right? But they have to earn it. Once they have to earn it, then it's up to them. So it's possible for them to frustrate God. So what does God do? And by the way, it's unlikely, but did it ever happen? Of course it happened, by Noach. That's exactly what happened. That the overwhelming majority of mankind sinned 24/7. So the Rosh said, enough is enough, and he destroyed the world. Thank God that Noach, obviously, and whatever his family, that they obviously were doing the will of God, so they saved mankind. So it actually happened. That fear, or that concern, that mankind can destroy everything, actually happened. So what the Rosh does is very interesting. He says, I am going to create a series of actions that will guarantee that the world must exist, A, that the Jews must exist, and there must be an Olam Haba. There must be a nation Olam Haba. This series of actions is called the Anhogas HaYichud. It is the acts of God, Yichud, that testifies to the absolute oneness and supremacy of God. Why? Because God is a judge. What he's now doing by guaranteeing that there will be a future world with the Jews in it, this isn't justice, this isn't judgment. You know, judgment says, hey, if you did bad, you're destroyed. But this says, you did bad, fine, I'll work around it, and I'll still get you to Olam Haba. This isn't justice anymore. This is pure rehabilitation. You see? So God instituted that series of actions. That's called Anhogas Yichud, because God, if he wants, even though a person deserves a certain whatever, Yisurim, but God can suspend the Yisurim if he wants, because it indicates that God is above justice. He can dispense with the whole justice and do whatever he wants. You see, those series of actions that guarantees the survival of the Jew and the fact that the Jews will be in Olam Haba is called Anhogas Yichud. Very, very important idea. But here's the problem that Anhogas